You know, I hope some of you will stay for the discussion, but first of all, I want to say, and she knows it well because I tell her every time I see it, but aren't we so glad that Maxine Waters stayed on the case? And so you will see, we call her Auntie Max, still on TV today, still prosecuting and litigating and pushing forward for civil and human rights. And so I just want to, thank you all for giving her a round of applause. I think that Dr. King never condoned violence, never condoned the kind of behavior that we saw on the screen, but he said he understood. He said that riots were the language of the unheard. And so tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about that with the directors. But secondly, I want to thank National Geographic for bringing this documentary here tonight. This is the kind of rare look that few of us, even those of us who were reporters in 1992, I was a young reporter with young children working for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, going to school at Emory, watching this every single day. But this is the footage that most of us never saw. This was home video, this was news video, this was on the ground in Los Angeles and way up close. And so I consider the people in this room and the people that will watch it on cable when it debuts in a few weeks, I consider us blessed to have had this narrative and blessed to have had Dan and TJ bring it to us. And so I want to invite them to come on down because we're going to have a bit of a conversation tonight. I have to tell you, and we had a phone call the other day, that I was a skeptic. I had begun to watch pieces of it, but hadn't watched the full documentary. And I got on the phone to talk with them. And I wondered how two young men who, I think you said you were 12? And how old are you, TJ? 12. Both of you
12 years old.
Both of you all were 12 years old.
I'm not 12 now. I was 12 then.
Not 12 now. I am. But anyway, and so both of you all were 12 when all of this unfolded and went down. And I was concerned that if you weren't a part of the story or immersed in it, then maybe you wouldn't be able to tell it. Well, certainly they have proven me wrong. But I want to ask you in the interest of the audience tonight, where were you when this story first came to you? Did you see it on television? Did a relative tell about it? How did the story come to you? And then the second part of the question is, what was the motivation or driving factor for you saying, I've got to be involved in this project?
When the unrest initially happened in 92, where was I?
When did the story first come to you? Was it then in 92 or sometime after? When did the story first come to you?
Would you talk about it?
I obviously remember it happening. I remember kind of sadly, the iconic images of certain bits of violence. But that was it. That stuck with me. And then I moved to Los Angeles. I always forget that I moved to Los Angeles in 2000 for the first summer, and that was 8 years after this had happened. I've lived in Los Angeles now for 17 years or 16 years, so it really is my home, and I don't even think it's dawned on me how close it was to that I moved out there. But so it was always there, but I don't think we were thinking about it like.
No, I think my connection to it is a bit different in the sense that Los Angeles is my home, but I don't. In all candor, it's not. I didn't feel the need to dive into the story because of that nature. I felt the need to dive into the story because I'm mixed race, and as someone who's mixed race, you're kind of, especially in America, you're inherently always looking for your place in society because one community says something about you that another community sees something. It's like W.E.B. Du Bois has this idea of double consciousness, the way in which you see yourself, but the way in which society sees you, and I cannot control the way in which other people see me. So as a 12-year-old, I'm inherently disconnected from this story with the exception of the imagery that was sent out. And you're always being told that these are race riots. So that stuck with me. as someone who is inherently looking at what their place is in society through the lens of race, and I'm being told from news media that these are race riots, that's never left. So that is at least the lens in which I kind of initially was drawn towards telling the story. And then the story came to us because of the 25th year anniversary, and the two producers, Simon Chin and Jonathan Chin, had already sold the idea of revisiting these events to National Geographic. And then they came to us to direct it, and that's when we proposed the idea of doing it without any narration or without any voiceover. Like I explained at the when we introduced the film, I think the intention was to create an experience, to draw you closer to what the events felt like, not necessarily analyze the events, and to not shy away from what the reality of the events were like for individuals that did experience them.
And so in doing this and bringing this production to screen, you went through an awful lot of videotape, an awful lot of archival footage.
Yes, I don't recommend that for anyone.
Yeah, I thought to ask you. And so as you're in the midst of all of that, what is the most shocking piece of video that you came upon? What just made you kind of say, this is real for me, this happened?
So much. I mean, the interview with Judge Carlin, when she says, I know a criminal when I see... I mean, I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. And to think that she said that freely in an interview, like, that was, like, totally okay. That was... yeah. Sure. I still, every time I see that, it makes me nauseous.
Yeah. If we're going for the word shock, I think that I agree. I think with Judge Carlin's saying I know a criminal when I see one. I mean, that's the audacity and the arrogance to say that to me and to us. We talked about this idea that ideology is a reflection of the system itself, and that's all I need to know to really understand the notion of systemic injustice.
I would also, I mean, I think you just saw the end there, the specificity of, I mean, like, I think we said one time we were doing like an interview, we were like, we're not idiots, we know history repeats itself, but like the specificity of Watts in 65 and what happened in 92 was that, I mean, it was shocking in a way of like, it just like lines up in this way.
That you would bring this to fore in this time. And I think the people here in this audience, that they know the names. Trayvon Martin, they know the names. Michael Brown, they know the names. Eric Garner, you know the names. Ezell Ford, Los Angeles, you know the names. And there are women there. Catherine Golston, there was an old woman here in Atlanta who police burst into her door. No warrant, wrong house, killed her. And so to bring this to fore in this time certainly has, I think, a special meaning, a special resonance for new audiences. And so for those of us like my children who weren't cognizant during that time, what lessons do you want them to take away from the history as they now grapple with what is very present for them?
It's a good question. We've been really surprised by younger audiences really resonating with the material because they may have heard about it or read a blurb or read a Wikipedia page, but didn't actually understand the extent of the unrest. So I think for us is, if anything, I think this is a tool to start asking questions more than to find solutions. And I think, we screened in Baltimore, was that 2 days ago? And, there's a difference between screening at a film festival in New York versus doing a community screening in Baltimore. And I thought what was really profound was there was there is the what do you want? Why do you want to make this film? And then there's the why do you really want to make this film? And what I kept coming back to is this notion of, a lot of people say they want to engage in this work because you want to keep the conversation going, and I think the idea is the moment we stop having the conversation is when it gets really dangerous. For those that are not faced with misconduct by police or misconduct by authority, they don't believe this stuff happens to people on a day-to-day. So if we can create a platform in which there's not someone telling you, but rather you can say, that I did not feel good about that, maybe people will start believing that, yes, these stories are not fiction. These are people's lives. And so, again, I think, as trite as it may sound, I think the intention is to ask the questions and to have the right conversation, continue to the conversation.
Yeah, I would just add that was behind our approach to it too. We were like, there's a lot of, just in the world of documentaries, even the subject has been covered a lot, things around the subject have been covered a lot, and oftentimes it's like you have the person talking in the interview, and it's all like, starts to become like rationalized in a way that it's like, not only you as the audience go, well, they're talking about it in a rational way, so this must be under control or something. And I don't know, it doesn't stick. We wanted to like present something that does make people go, this is not right. This is like not, I don't want to feel this way. In the hopes that can spur action and not just like people talking at people and saying things, if that makes sense.
One of the things that was most compelling to me, I was at first confused by it when I saw the first Rodney King videos.
I thought you were confused by the movie, because I was confused making the movie.
I was at first confused by how they brought him out into public, pre-civil litigation. And I always wondered, what was motivating some of the comments. I did not want to question Rodney King's sincerity, because that was his lived experience. I didn't take those licks, he did. And so that was pretty stunning to me. And I do know from the reporting that he lived a very troubled life until the very end. That he was always Rodney King, could never walk away from that. We don't know where those officers are, but we do know how Rodney King lived until his end. Was there an oddity for you in watching him say, this wasn't about race? Was there an oddity for you in hearing him say, can't we all just get along? Were there, what kind of reaction did you have to seeing King tell his own story?
The first thing you bring up, I'm glad you bring up, because that was something we talked forever about that. When we found that raw tape and his lawyer interjects and says, we don't want to make this about race. The first time I saw that, I just started laughing. I'm like, what? It's inherently about that. But I also I don't know, it was just such a complicated moment. These clients or his lawyers, I guess, were after his best interest. I have to assume that they did talk to them. I don't know, there was just something so complicated about that moment. We talked a lot about, we didn't want to make the impression that they were trying to say that it wasn't. But we ultimately included it because of the kind of cognitive dissonance that it creates in the thing. The last part, I'll just say, when we watched the raw video of his statement, for me, that can we all get along had become like a kind of pop culture, some people would say it and kind of laugh about it. And then watching that raw tape of him, I was like, oh my, this guy's 25 years old. It was, and so it was one of our early conversations was how do we create something so that when you get to that moment, again, it's weird. There's so many weird things happening. He's paraded out and it's in Beverly Hills, and it's like, hey, say something to save the city, which is just ridiculous. But like at the same time, I totally feel his sincerity and whatever. I mean, I can't even imagine what was going through his mind.
Cannot imagine. Are we going to move to the audience? Okay, so let me do this, because I've asked a lot of questions, but there are a great number of people here. I'm sure that you have questions for the directors. There's a microphone in the back, and if you will raise your hand and give us your question,
Right back here.
we'll do our best for it. And so there are a number in the background.
If you have a question,
Right here in the front, and then one on the stage left side, stage right side. Okay.
First, two folks. I'm actually from Compton, California, so I was in the middle of it when it went down. I want you to talk about it. Rodney King, when he made the "Can we all get along" statement, which is, I don't know if people knew, we hated Rodney King after that. Rodney King was like, because we felt like he was standing up for Rodney. Rodney was a representation of all of us. And it went down. When it went down, he said, "Can we all get along?" It was just so much disdain because we feel like, all right. And it looked like the riots and uprisings stopped because he said that, but it was really because he's standing up for this guy. He's not standing up for himself. And then also, the uprising started in 92, but what preceded it was just Daryl Gates, honestly, his irresponsibility in the community. And he was warned that this was going to happen, and he did not prepare for it. And he pulled out, and a lot of police officers lost their lives, a lot of fire men have lost their lives behind it, and a lot of people in the community. So I kind of like to talk about that.
I can speak to the first bit, if you want to do the second question. With King, the kind of goes back to even the first clip when he's rolled out, and they ask, and his lawyers explicitly interrupt the journalists who kind of asked them if there were any slurs. What was really important for us was to, I think the fact that is not on his consciousness, because first and foremost, he just got beat, right? So he's not making a political statement. He's trying to gather his wits about him. It's important for us to remind people that, and that's why we explicitly also say 25 years old. He's a 25-year-old young man who was put in a situation that is well beyond his means of communicating, and he's a victim. So for the city to burn down because of systemic misconduct by authorities is a lot of pressure to put on a 25-year-old young man to say, I understand these issues and I'm going to speak on behalf of these. So I think for us, it made it more powerful that to be as honest as we could with who King was as a person. And as you mentioned, he was just a guy trying to live, trying to get a job, trying to take care of his kids, trying to, and to put pressure on him as if he was going to be a savior, I think would be extremely unfair. But the criticism you're saying is something that we heard quite a bit. There was a lot of disappointment in that. It's almost like he had a platform and he didn't take advantage of it. But the reality is that's just not the person he was. But the hope is if we can acknowledge that, then we're actually acknowledging that there's a greater problem, and that is occurring every day. King just happened to be wrapped up and put on in a platform, which was probably unfair to him.
Gates, yeah, that's, if you live in Los Angeles, as you know, like, the history of it, he has it's funny, going into this, I knew of him, I knew some of the history, I didn't know it as well as I know now, obviously, but but I just had a negative opinion of him just because I lived in Los Angeles, and it was I don't think you meet a lot of people that have a positive opinion of him. But I was like going into it, I was like, okay, I have to keep an open mind and like research this and try to. But like of everything that we did, it's just for me at least, it was impossible not to just, I mean, have a very visceral reaction to him. And when you were asking if we had shocking stuff, I mean, there was cuts of the film where the first hour of the film was just scene after scene of just this ridiculous behavior on his part. And we ultimately stripped some of that away because, you know, the film wasn't just about that. But yeah, I mean, you know, we purposely have in the title sequence with Mayor Bradley getting elected, and then the next thing you see is a continuation of Chief Parker with Gates saying he's going to be exactly like him.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Essentially, a part of what you're talking about is Operation Hammer, right? And there's a lot of details. You know, it's Operation Hammer combined with
Eula Love,
you know, they did set money aside, you know, just in case there was any kind of unrest, depending on what the verdict was, and I think they set $1 million aside, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's like we didn't want to get into like conspiracy theory, but like if you look at some of the way that he, again, there are things that, I'll put it this way, there are things the LAPD does if the Lakers are in Game 7 that they didn't do for this.
So, I mean, those details are important. Again, for us, it was in the construction of the film, the sum is bigger than the parts, right? So you see the end, I mean, there's some very explicit editing at the end, and at the end, you start to realize that these things are a cycle. So that way, you're not saying, oh, well, Gates is a bad guy, you get him out, and then everything's fixed. That's right, that's not the case.
Hi, how y'all doing? Thank you so much I'm right here. Thank you for the opportunity to screen this film. I was an infant when this happened, and I've seen this, I hate my voice, I'm sorry. I've seen this footage throughout my life, through many documentaries and short films. A lot of the backdrop was Fuck the Police, a lot of NWA for the score. Did you guys intentionally or have a conscious decision to do a lot of strings, a lot of piano keys throughout the entire film? That's my first question. Second question, I'm here by way of Virginia. I work as an epidemiologist at the CDC. My goal in life is to be a documentarian and win the best documentary feature at the Academy Award by 2025.
Do it.
Yes.
I'm going to do that.
I'll support you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that means a lot to me. I knew I wanted to do that as soon as I saw Spike Lee's Four Little Girls when I was a child. But anyway, I wanted to know, my second question, what's some advice you have for someone like me that's working in the field that she loves, but ultimately wants to use her life brain and go out to LA and pursue this dream? First question first.
The first question about the score. Yeah, we thought of the film structurally, like you know, because you don't have a narrator and talking heads, you don't have a traditional kind of like journey, right? And so for us, we had to figure out a way to propel, to keep the narrative moving. And so you notice part of it is we switch from points of view, like POV to POV to POV. So you're with the Korean Americans and you're with law enforcement and then you're with all these different lenses and you just interweave throughout the course of the whole film. And it's really the narrative of the city. So in thinking, how do you create that, we thought of the film more as like a symphony or like an opera, and it operates in movements. And so in thinking, I mean, I think you could use any type of music just within that structure, but we decided that we wanted to actually feel big and feel operatic and feel symphonic. You know, at times you're always straddling the line, and at times, you know, we end with an actual opera track. Right. Like the idea is we're looking at ourselves, and we are dramatic as you know, as human beings. So from the jump, the idea was to create a symphonic experience.
Get in the gravitas of it.
Yeah.
It was from the jump, that was the idea. And then advice.
Yeah.
well, make stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's nothing better than, I mean, TJ and I didn't go to film school.
No.
We both just started picking up camera and shooting stuff. And one of the great things about documentaries is you don't have to ask permission, so to speak. You really can just go out and make a film. We as directors just want to tell stories and make films. It has happened that we've mostly made documentaries so far because, again, there isn't a huge barrier of entry. We don't have to go do a dog and pony show for somebody to we can just go and start making it. Undefeated, which has put us in a position where now, we can say we talk about an idea and, people are willing to trust us. But Undefeated, you're looking at the crew of it. I mean, literally, it was the two of us. We shot it, we did the sound, we edited it, we did everything on the film. And then it blew up and changed our lives. But it really came out of, we found this story and went and filmed it.
Don't be afraid to take advantage of your family. Film them. I've told stories of I've had mediums of old photos and video and stuff, and I've made stuff out of that material to the point in which we made a piece about my dad's side of the family that was nominated for a Webby. It was zero money. It's just a 3-minute piece. But seriously, just keep making things, because that's trial and error is how you're going to correct your own. You're going to find your voice. You're going to find your style. Just keep making stuff.
Cool.
And writing.
Remember my name. It's Erica Street.
Erica Street.
2025 Academy Awards. Thank you.
Excellent job, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Since history repeats itself, do you feel that you should have included excerpts from 2015, 2017? If not, why did you not include present day compared to? So now you have boomers, you have Generation X, and then you have millennials. Why did you exclude maybe what's going on now?
Well, we actually had, a version where we did, but in watching it, we felt like everyone is thinking about it anyways, and we wanted to have the audience make those connections on their own because we thought they'd be stronger. And another kind of practical type thing is we really want this film to be timeless. And the sad part about that is we're not going to, these issues aren't going to be solved and in a year or 2 or 3 years. And sadly, we can probably predict that more things that have happened in the last couple of years will continue to happen. And we didn't want to date this film so that 5 or 6 years down the road, suddenly when those images start coming out, you're looking at 2014, but it's 2020, and maybe not. It wouldn't feel as present, I guess, maybe then. There'd be other, and again, I think by keeping it contained in the time that we did, it will have a timeless quality, and we'll be able to always kind of resonate with it in that way. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight, coming out to have this discussion.
Thank you.
Goldie, thank you so much. Your introduction, that really means the world to us. And we really want to thank 135th, too, who organized this.
Thank you.
They have been incredible, and thank you all for coming out.
Wait, before you guys leave, I want to make sure that you guys are talking about LA 92 on social media. I know some of you had to leave, but it's very important that, this mic is weird, it's very important that people hear our voice and reactions about this film. Support this. This is a very rare look at something that has affected us, even whether you were born or not. You have been affected by the incidents that happened in 1992. You need to tell somebody. Tune in Sunday, April 30th. 9/8 Central and National Geographic, and let people know what's going on in our society, in our justice system. All right, so thank you for coming, and good night.